Hey, how's it going, guys? Thank you for joining me on this week's episode of The Real Deal. You guys kind of caught me setting up before my my intro went live. So today we're talking about something that a lot of people hate, HOAs. And I'm going to talk about benefits of HOAs and some funny stories of recent experiences that I've had with houses that should have HOAs. So it's kind of an ongoing trend. Like anytime I talk to a new client, like I would say 70% of the time, a lot of times they're like, I want a house without an HOA. Unfortunately, for the most part, most houses built after the 90s have HOAs. There are some communities, it's rare, but there are some communities that were built after the 90s that don't have HOAs, but for the most part, like 90% of the newer homes and newer style homes are going to have an HOA. And there's definitely some downsides to them. I've heard some horror stories about some HOAs that won't even allow you to park your car on the streets overnight. I've heard some horror stories with HOAs that if fees are left unpaid, potentially that could even cause a foreclosure on your property. I know for sure that I've sold houses in the past where the previous owner owed a large amount of HOA fees, and then when the house is sold, that cuts into their profits. So there is some downsides, but this one is going to focus on the upsides because the truth of the matter is, for the most part, you're going to have to purchase a house with an HOA unless you're buying something in an older community that's built like in the 70s, maybe 80s. But for the most part, anything built in the 90s or newer, it's going to have an HOA. A lot of clients that are coming in from out of town too. I have a client that's coming in from Colorado. I have some recent clients that are inquiring from South Dakota. It's not that common to have HOAs in some of these other states because the states, obviously the homes are older. Arizona is a pretty new state. So it's definitely something a little bit more common in Arizona or here in the metropolitan area than it is in other states. But let's talk about why HOAs are a good idea. So obviously those are the horror stories, but I'll give you an example. When I drop off my son from school, I pass through a community that's beautiful homes, but they don't have HOA in that particular community. And I passed by this one house today where every single neighbor had beautiful manicured lawns because they have that pride of ownership. But all it takes is that one person that just doesn't give a crap, or somebody that's renting and then they don't care. Like, it's not my house. I don't care what it looks like. And this house just had overgrown weeds it was just ugly, ugly, ugly sight. Like the people didn't even have grass to maintain. It was just rock landscaping. So all they had to do is spray a couple, weed killer pesticides and it'd be done, over with. But once again, there's people that just don't care. Now, I'll be honest. There's been times where my weeds might be a little bit overgrown. I might have missed a boat. You know how sometimes it rains, these damn weeds come out of nowhere. So that has been the case, but obviously I address it usually within 2 to 3 days, right? That wasn't the case with this house. It was definitely a house that the weeds were just 100% on just not taken care of. Let me tell you about this other crazy one. And this one is very relevant because I pass by this house too almost every single day. This is actually in Nilsa's mom's community. Now, she lives in a beautiful community. Everybody there is in there. It's usually a lot of older families or senior citizens that live in this community over in Peoria. Beautiful, beautiful homes, ranch style homes. And there's this gentleman. He's actually been on the news let me actually show you guys who I'm talking about. So this gentleman here, he's been on the news a couple different times because of his house. So the story is that this guy had some sort of a disagreement with his family, or not his family, his neighbors. And out of spite, he started just doing some crazy shit to his house. And it's funny because his story kind of changed up because they did a news article on him in April. And I'll show you guys that news article. And they did a news article in November. This is a news article from April. The guy legit had a middle finger painted in the front of his garage. And this is so that was in April of 2017. And then this is the most recent one that he did, which was in November of 2017. He changed the story up though. Now he says that it's his artistic side that's causing him to paint his house like this. I think I'm going to go with the first story where he was doing this out of spite, simply because when I drive by, this guy has some like weird ass vehicles in his in his front yard. This is what it used to look like at one point too. It says menopause manor. Like obviously the guy, I mean, yeah, he says it's artistic. I definitely feel like it's something out of spite. I could be wrong. If you guys personally know this gentleman, then I do apologize, but I definitely feel like it's done out of spite because he has like weird vehicles kind of scattered through the neighborhood because it's legal. There's no HOA to monitor that. So he has like old like ambulance, I forget the name of it, the morgue, whatever vehicles they use to transport caskets. Like he has like these weird vehicles. Like the guy's retired. He has obviously a lot of time on his hands. So he uses his money to repaint his house into these weird colors. And then he goes and he purchases these weird ass cars to, furthermore piss off his neighbors. So that is something that is a prime example of why an HOA isn't a bad idea. Like there's nothing the neighbors can do. And it's crazy because I've seen his neighbors list houses throughout the years. Man, people are buying them, but obviously because they have this neighbor, they're not able to sell their house at what actual market value is for the most part. And, as a real estate agent, anytime I see a house for sale somewhere close in my vicinity, I'm like, what the hell? What agent beat me out to this house? But I'll check and see what the house sold for. And for the most part, they're selling about 20 grand under market value. So obviously there's the nuisance of having a annoying neighbor. Obviously there's the simple fact that it just looks ugly. It's not pleasing to the eye, especially when you have people that come and visit you at your house. And then there's a third factor, which is it's causing you money. If you're having to sell your house for a lesser amount because your neighbors next door can't maintain your house, or obviously this guy's an extreme case. Granted, this doesn't happen that often. Most of the time it's the weeds. Most of the time it's chipping paint on the house. Most of the time it's faded out paint or a bunch of cars in the front yard. Those are the most common ones. But the point is that having an HOA is meant to everybody think it's like, oh, they're only there to take your money. Yeah, sometimes that's the case, but for the most part, an HOA is there to maintain the value of your property, maintain your community, to make it look nice. And I guarantee you, more times than not, an HOA is going to be more beneficial to you than not. So I would definitely say if you guys have considered purchasing a house and you guys are reluctant to purchase a house with an HOA, or if you know anybody that has that mindset, send them this video, show them that it is a good thing. Trust me, to have an HOA, because not even the city could do anything to this guy. This guy's had this house painted like this for over 2 years and they can't do anything about it. So reconsider if you guys have thought about purchasing a house and you guys are like, no, I don't want an HOA because I don't want them to tell me what to do. You want that. You want to make sure that your property maintains its property value. So that's a skinny on HOA, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. This was a funny one. If you guys know anybody that's looking to buy or sell, send them my way. I'll find them a house that's in a nice community with an HOA. You guys take care.